Welcome to Cheater Confessions. Let's get started with today's story. It all started when my wife Ashley and I decided to search for our dream home. "Adam, this is the perfect time for us to upgrade," Ashley said one evening as we sat on the couch. "I mean, we've talked about this for years, haven't we?" She wasn't wrong. We had been saving for ages to move out of our modest townhouse. But what surprised me was how quickly she found a realtor. Daniel Reeve, a name that would later haunt me. "Daniel came highly recommended," she explained, her eyes lighting up as she scrolled through his website on her tablet. "He's got amazing reviews and specializes in luxury properties." At first, I didn't think much of it. Ashley was always thorough when it came to decisions like this. Plus, Daniel was charismatic, sharply dressed, and seemed to know every nook and cranny of the city's housing market. The first few weeks were normal, or so I thought. Daniel took us to see property after property, always greeting us with his signature grin and a clipboard full of listings. He had a knack for making us feel like his only clients. "This one has a view that'll take your breath away," he'd say, gesturing toward a panoramic window as Ashley stood beside him, nodding enthusiastically. I couldn't help but notice how often their conversations drifted from square footage to casual banter. But I told myself I was overthinking it. After all, this was his job. One night, Ashley came home late from what was supposed to be a routine property visit. I was on the couch, half asleep, when she walked in, holding her heels in one hand and a folder in the other. "Long night?" I asked, yawning. "Yeah, Daniel wanted to go over some paperwork for the Kensington property," she replied, avoiding my eyes as she disappeared into the kitchen. "It's such a good deal, but we have to act fast." Something felt off, but I shook it off. This was our dream home we were talking about. Of course, she was invested. The late nights continued. There were meetings, phone calls, and last-minute showings. At first, I didn't think much of it. The housing market was competitive, and Ashley was always the type to give her all when she had a goal in mind. But then, other things started to stand out. Little things that, at the time, I brushed aside. She was on her phone constantly. Whether we were sitting on the couch, having dinner, or even lying in bed, her screen was always lighting up with notifications. And she wasn't just scrolling mindlessly. She'd be typing furiously, occasionally letting out a soft laugh or a smile at whatever was on her screen. "What's so funny?" I asked one evening, my curiosity getting the better of me. She looked up, startled, as if she'd forgotten I was even in the room. "Oh, nothing," she said quickly. "Just looking at more listings. Daniel sent me a few options earlier." I nodded, though something about her answer felt rehearsed. Daniel again. His name had been coming up more and more lately, but I convinced myself it was because of the house hunt. Still, her laughter over listings seemed oddly out of place. The turning point came one night when she got home late from another showing with Daniel. I was sitting on the couch, half watching TV, when she walked in, her bag hanging from her shoulder and a tired expression on her face. "You're up late," she said, offering me a faint smile as she kicked off her heels. "Couldn't sleep," I replied, glancing at her as she moved past me toward the kitchen. As she passed, a scent lingered in the air, subtle but unmistakable. It was a men's cologne, not mine. "New perfume?" I asked casually, testing the waters. She froze for the briefest moment before turning to me. "Huh? Oh no," she said with a quick laugh. "Must have been from one of the properties. You know how some of those places smell all fancy." I nodded, but a knot formed in my stomach. The explanation didn't sit right. The following days, I paid closer attention. I started noticing patterns, how her laughter at her phone became more frequent, how her meetings with Daniel always seemed to stretch later and later. Then came Saturday. I was reviewing some bills at the dining table while Ashley was upstairs, supposedly getting ready to visit a few properties on her own. Her phone buzzed on the kitchen counter, lighting up with a notification. Normally, I wouldn't have given it a second glance, but this time I couldn't help myself. The name on the screen made my stomach drop. Daniel Reeve. I hesitated, my hand hovering over the phone. I shouldn't look, I told myself. I should trust her. But something inside me screamed that I needed to see. Slowly, I picked up the phone and read the message. "Last night was incredible. Can't stop thinking about it. Can't wait for tonight." The words blurred as my mind raced. My hands began to shake and it felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. Last night? She'd told me she was out looking at properties. And what the hell was he thinking about that couldn't wait? I set the phone down on the counter, trying to process what I'd just seen. It felt like my whole world had been turned upside down. The late nights, the extra meetings, the way she laughed at her phone, all the pieces started clicking into place. She wasn't looking at listings. She wasn't just working late. Ashley, my wife, the woman I trusted with everything, was cheating on me. And Daniel Reeve, the charming, always-on realtor, was the one she was sneaking around with. I leaned against the counter, my heart pounding as I replayed the past few weeks in my head. The missed dinners, the way she avoided eye contact when I asked her about her late nights, and that cologne. God, how could I have been so blind? I stood there for what felt like hours, staring at the phone, the message burning in my mind. Finally, I heard her footsteps coming down the stairs. "Hey, Adam," she said brightly, oblivious to the storm brewing inside me. "I'm heading out now. Don't wait up for me, okay?" I forced a smile, masking the fury and heartbreak boiling just beneath the surface. "Sure, Ashley. If you find something good, let me know." As the door closed behind her, I clenched my fists. I wasn't sure what I was going to do yet, but one thing was certain. I wasn't letting this slide. Without thinking, I grabbed my keys and followed her. My heart was pounding in my chest and my mind was spinning with the horrifying reality of what I had just discovered. The last few months, everything seemed so off. Now the truth was finally crashing down on me. I had to see it for myself. I kept my distance, driving slowly to make sure she didn't spot me in the rearview mirror. Ashley turned onto a street lined with high-end homes, the kind we'd been looking at but could never quite afford. She pulled into the driveway of a house I didn't recognize, but it looked like one of those properties that was listed for sale. I parked a few houses down, my heart racing. I watched as she stepped out of the car, smoothing down her dress and checking her phone. Then, a few moments later, I saw him. Daniel Reeve. He appeared at the door of the house, flashing that same charming smile he'd always worn when we discussed potential homes. They exchanged a few words, then, to my horror, they kissed. The kiss was slow, deliberate, and completely devoid of any hint of hesitation. I felt my chest tighten, the world spinning around me. I pulled out my phone and snapped a few pictures, documenting the moment that confirmed everything I had feared. They didn't notice me. They were too caught up in their own world. They walked toward the front door of the house and I stayed hidden, crouched behind a car parked along the street. Once they disappeared inside, I didn't waste any time. I followed, moving carefully to avoid being seen. I knew they were busy with their own twisted version of reality, but I couldn't help but feel sick to my stomach, like I was betraying my own morals just by being here. I reached the side of the house and found a spot where I could see into the living room through the glass door. What I saw made me freeze in place. Ashley and Daniel were standing in the living room, their hands all over each other. He was already pulling off her blouse, his lips trailing down her neck as she pushed him back toward the couch. They didn't even seem to care that they were in full view of the street. I stood there, hidden in the shadows, my breath catching in my throat. The anger was burning inside me, but there was something else too, a deep sinking pain that spread through my chest. This was my wife, the woman I had loved and trusted, and here she was, letting another man touch her the way only I should have been able to. I quickly pulled out my phone again and started recording. I wasn't sure what I was going to do with the footage, but I had to capture this. They continued, oblivious to me. I focused the camera on them, my hands shaking as I documented their betrayal. Their clothes were scattered across the living room floor, and I could see them getting closer and closer to the final moment. I could barely keep my composure as I watched them, knowing full well that this was the end of everything I thought was real. The perfect house, the dream life. None of it had ever been real. I left quietly, making sure not to draw attention. The drive home was a blur. I had the proof now. I wasn't going to confront them just yet. I needed to think. Divorce seemed like the only option now, but I had to be smart about it. I'd go to a lawyer first thing in the morning to start the process, to protect myself, and ensure she wouldn't get a dime from the divorce. I'd make sure she paid for what she'd done, emotionally and financially. I also needed to wait for the right moment. I wasn't going to let Ashley or Daniel off easy. When the time came, I'd confront them both, and they would understand the consequences of their betrayal. When I finally arrived home, I acted like nothing had changed. I went through the motions, putting my keys on the counter, grabbing a drink from the fridge. I didn't want to show her any sign that I knew what had been happening behind my back. I needed time to think, to prepare. Ashley came home hours later, just as expected. She smiled and greeted me like she always did, as if nothing was wrong. "Hey babe, it's so late. How was your evening?" she asked casually, as if the affair wasn't the last thing on my mind. "Good," I replied, my voice steady, hiding the storm inside. "I just got a few things sorted out." I could tell she didn't sense anything was off. She was still acting as if everything was fine. I wasn't going to let her in on it yet. She could enjoy her little charade for a little longer, but I knew it wouldn't last. The next morning, I found myself at a lawyer's office. I laid out the details, and the lawyer outlined my options: divorce, asset protection, and how to use the evidence I had gathered. I left the office feeling a sense of control that had been missing for months. I bided my time, waiting for the right moment. Ashley continued with her charade, none the wiser. I was calm, patient. But inside, I was counting the days until I could confront her and Daniel. When the time was right, I would expose everything and make sure they paid for the betrayal. The opportunity came sooner than I expected. Daniel was hosting an open house for a high-profile listing, a sprawling mansion in the heart of the city. It was the kind of event that attracted wealthy clients, socialites, and even local media. Perfect. I showed up unannounced, walking in with Ashley by my side. She looked confused, her eyes flickering between me and the extravagant space. But this was the moment I'd been waiting for. Daniel was in his element, charming as ever, until he saw us. "Adam," he greeted, his smile faltering for a split second. "What brings you here?" "Just wanted to see what all the fuss is about," I replied, matching his fake grin, "and maybe have a little chat." His eyes flickered with unease, but he quickly recovered. "Of course. Why don't we step outside?" "Oh no," I said loudly enough for the room to hear. "I think here is fine." The chatter in the room quieted as heads turned toward us. I could feel the eyes of the crowd on me, their curiosity piqued. I felt the tension in the air, but I was beyond caring. "Ladies and gentlemen," I began, my voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through me. "I just wanted to thank Daniel Reeve for his exceptional service, not just in real estate, but in other areas as well." A murmur spread through the crowd. Daniel's face turned beet red. "You see," I continued, "Daniel here went above and beyond to entertain my wife during our home search. Isn't that right, Daniel?" Ashley, who had just arrived with me, froze in the doorway. Her face turned pale, a mix of shock and horror spreading across it as she realized what was happening. "Adam, stop," she pleaded, but I was past the point of caring. "No, Ashley, I think everyone here deserves to know just how dedicated Daniel is to his clients," I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm. "So dedicated, in fact, that he helped himself to my wife while showing her properties." The room erupted in gasps and whispers. Someone in the back even pulled out their phone to record. I watched as Ashley's face twisted in disbelief, her mouth opening and closing as if she were trying to find the right words. But there was nothing left to say. She had been caught. "Please," Ashley said, her voice trembling as she took a step toward me. "I never meant for this to happen. It was a mistake. We didn't think—" "You didn't think?" I interrupted, my voice rising. "That's the problem, Ashley. You didn't think about me. You didn't think about the life we built, the trust we had. You didn't think about anything except your own selfish desires." The guilt on her face was unmistakable, but it didn't change what had happened. I couldn't shake the image of her with him, her laughter, her smiles, the way she'd thrown our marriage away for a few stolen moments. "I'm done with you, Ashley," I spat, my voice cold and resolute. "I've filed for divorce. It's over." Daniel was standing there, silent now, looking like a deer caught in headlights. The whole room was silent, waiting for the next move, and I could feel the weight of their eyes on me. But I didn't care anymore. This was it. The aftermath was quick and unforgiving. Ashley begged for forgiveness, but I couldn't listen. The woman I loved had betrayed me in the worst way possible. The divorce was straightforward, uncontested. I took everything we had worked for, knowing she didn't deserve any of it. But I wasn't finished with Daniel. Armed with evidence, photos, texts, and videos, I sued him for emotional distress and misconduct. The fallout was immediate. His reputation crumbled, his agency fired him, and within weeks his real estate license was revoked. Ashley moved out, pleading for another chance, but I had nothing left to give. The trust was gone. In the end, I found peace knowing justice was served. The betrayal had taken its toll, but it also taught me to trust myself and take control of my life again. And that's exactly what I did. Thank you for watching.